Quote, Donald Trump and his allies are drafting plans to potentially invoke the Insurrection Act on his first day in office to allow him to deploy the military against civil demonstrations. Quote, dubbed Project 2025, the group is developing a plan to include draft executive orders that would deploy the U.S. military domestically under the Insurrection Act. The proposal is identified in internal discussions as an immediate priority.
Yeah, on day one, deploy the military to quell civil disturbances. What kind of civil disturbances, you ask? Well, if you remember back in January of 2017, there was these. The Women's March, where 500,000 women mostly came to Washington, D.C. wearing pink kitty cat hats. Yeah, that's what you're hearing in that report. Big new reporting out of the Washington Post and also the New York Times, all talking about Project 2025. We're going to talk about in this video a little bit, get you caught up on what's going on, and then see what the truth is. I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here in the MeidasTouch network to discuss this. And it's a very complicated thing. You may have been hearing rumors about it, but actually I'm worried you haven't. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, right? Israel, Ukraine, Speaker of the House, government shuts down in 2 weeks. And now we've got these polls from the New York Times saying, oh, Biden's losing. It's the end of the world. Everyone's caught up in the horse race. And I'm much more worried about the loss of our democracy than anything else. So let me catch you up on what's going on in the latest reporting. So there's been a flood of new reporting from several news outlets. You can see it here, Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico had a really good op-ed at it, and a number of the broadcast stations. We'll look at some of the clips. What this is talking about is Project 2025, which is part of an ongoing effort that the Heritage Foundation has been doing since the Reagan era, where each time there's a new administration, they come out their big Republican dream. But this year's really different. These guys have gotten $22 million and brought together 75 of the most extreme white right-wing groups in the country. Not the traditional guys, not the Federalist Society. No, we're talking about all these MAGA groups you've heard of, all under the under the Heritage Foundation, to create what is now a 1,091-page manual with 30 sections that's going to basically be implemented on day one. And there's a lot to it. So, you know what? Ali Veshi did a great summary of this back in September. So let's watch this. If you haven't heard of Project 2025, this is a great clip to kind of catch you up on what's going on.
It's called Project 2025, the Conservative Promise. Now, unsurprisingly, it targets LGBTQ rights, equating any talk of gender or sexuality with pornography and pedophilia. Abortion rights, emphasizing the, quote, rights of the unborn. It looks to ban critical race theory and gender ideology and so-called environmental extremism from schools nationwide. And it recommends barring discussions of terms including gender equality, reproductive health, and reproductive rights. Banning discussion of reproductive rights. Now, that is some Handmaid's Tale stuff right there. It makes recommendations to implement so-called Christian, biblically based ideologies, reform voting rights, immigration, and more in a country whose First Amendment to its Constitution says, quote, Congress shall make no law representing an establishment of religion, end quote. But these are just the expected conservative talking points. Project 2025 goes further. It looks to dismantle what it calls the deep state, the administrative state, to defund the Department of Justice and ensure White House control of the DOJ. It wants to take down the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security. It wants to eliminate the Department of Education, Commerce, Health and Human Services. It aims to put federal agencies like the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission under direct presidential control. Project 2025 also relies heavily on the Reagan-era unitary executive theory, which is a fringe idea that Article 2 of the Constitution, which covers executive powers, gives the president complete control over the executive branch and rejects the idea that the three branches of government should have overlapping checks and balances on power. You may remember when Trump tried to use this line of reasoning in a speech in 2019, saying, quote, I have the Article 2, where I have the right to do whatever I want as president. Trump, for his part, is an easy and willing executor of the mandate for leadership agenda. Many of the suggestions of the mandate are personally beneficial to Donald Trump, like dismantling of the so-called administrative state, the FBI, the judiciary, that he so fervently claims have been after him since before he was even elected. Michael Hirsch, a senior correspondent at Foreign Policy, did a very deep dive on Project 2025 for Politico magazine. In his article titled Inside the Next Republican Revolution, he writes that much of Project 2025 will be difficult, if not impossible, to execute. Even the head of Heritage admits that to implement much of their vision, the conservative movement would need to not only have the presidency, but control of both chambers of Congress. Hirsch reports that Project 2025 aims to recruit, quote, conservative warriors to staff the next conservative president's administration starting on day one. They're already putting this plan into action. They're vetting people, making sure that their recruits are ideologically aligned. They're training them. Project 2025 is developing 30 video courses teaching each of the 30 chapters of the mandate. The architects of the project have talked openly about the long-term plans of their movement, making it clear that they are thinking 3, 4 presidential elections down the line. It is in part a training program, one of which the head of the Heritage Foundation promised will develop experts at killing bureaucracy. And while Trump is at the forefront of this conservative movement, probably in large part because it complements his personal agenda, it absolutely does not depend on Donald Trump. Already, Trump's top competitors, Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, have made attacking the so-called deep state central to their campaigns. Michael Hirsch also reported that Project 2025 has been in touch with Trump's team, DeSantis' team, and with the moderate Democrat Joe Manchin about their goals.
You heard all that, okay? Banning any discussion of LGBTQ. All the big Republican craziness being put into law. Now, is it possible to do all this without complete control of the Senate and the House? Probably not. But by the way, they're not just talking to Donald Trump. They're talking to DeSantis. They're talking to Vivek Ramaswamy. They're talking to Joe Manchin. Remember Joe Manchin, the guy that No Labels has been floating? You see where this is going? This is very, very dark stuff. I keep going back as a veteran and a former soldier about the idea of deploying our active duty military to suppress civil discussion, frankly, to any kind of a demonstration. You know, my son-in-law was at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally defending the Lee statue as a member of the Virginia National Guard. I take this very seriously. Imagine the idea of our service members being deployed to stop peaceful protest. That's what we're talking about. That is some dark, dark fascist stuff. So a little bit about what he's talking about. The big pieces of this puzzle: direct control of federal agencies. What does that mean? Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communications Commission. That means that Donald Trump or the president could control what broadcast stations. Donald Trump said he wants to shut down people to fight him. MSNBC losing their license to broadcast in the United States. That's what we're talking about when you talk about direct presidential control of the FCC. That means he could actually take away the licenses of TV stations or broadcast outlets that cross him. Direct control of the FTC, the Trade Commission. Imagine picking which companies. You know how DeSantis is mad at Disney? Imagine giving DeSantis the power, direct control of the FTC, to take away Disney's right to do business in America, because they said something mean about him. That's what that means when you talk about direct control of federal agencies. While they do fall under the executive branch, the president doesn't tell them what to do. In theory, they're independent. Imagine the power that we really could have under one president. We talk about something wasn't mentioned in great depth. This thing called the impounding rule. Now, what this means is, as an idea Nixon floated, where if he doesn't like something that Congress approved or funding that he has approved, he simply refuses to use the money. If you understand our checks and balances, Congress is the one who passes the budget. The president makes a recommendation, and then Congress approves it and floats. That's why we're worried about a government shutdown in 10 days, because they haven't approved all the funding bills yet. What these guys are talking about doing is giving the president the power to simply say, sure, you funded the DOJ or the special counsel's office. I say, no, I won't give them money. The president himself saying that he won't fund, for example, FBI, Imagine a petulant child like Donald Trump having the power to decide that he doesn't like money that Congress approves, so he simply won't spend it. They're going to exploit something called Schedule F. Schedule F is basically how we hire all of our federal employees. I'm making a mess today. I'm not redoing this. Schedule F is all of how the idea is they can fire whoever they want. Our civil service is professional. They're covered by laws that maintain them as being nonpartisan. The majority of jobs in the United States government are not partisan. See, there was a time when it was all about patronage. Who you knew got you a job. We got rid of that in the 20th century because it was outrageous and corrupt. He wants to go back to that corrupt system. And these guys are recruiting thousands. They've got a list of thousands of people who they're going to install when they get rid of Schedule F and bring in whomever they want. It's very, very dangerous, scary stuff. And that'll be a witch hunt in all the agencies. They mentioned that going through the intelligence branch. Imagine the 17 intelligence agencies serving at the whim of someone like Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, deciding who is loyal enough and who's not. Mike Flynn being reinstalled back in the Defense Intelligence. Just imagine what a catastrophe that would be for national intelligence and our national security. That's what they're talking about doing. And you know what? We don't actually have to imagine this to a lot. If you saw what happened in Israel, Netanyahu's been doing something like this in his government. His government's been doing a lot to try to take over their government, and they took their eye off their national security. There's a lot of political stuff going on in Israel, and then October 7th happened. It's not hard to imagine what could happen here if our our national security apparatus, our intelligence agencies are more worried about keeping their jobs or having some political appointee put in who doesn't care about actual security and what that would open us to as far as national security. Finally, one of the most disturbing parts is the story of the New York Times that came out where it talks about how they're actually looking for proper lawyers. They literally say the Federalist Society, which is hard right wing. The guys who gave us the Supreme Court, they're too, forgive my term, the Republicans on the project have been calling them squishes. They're not tough enough. So he's talking about using Department of Justice and special counsels to go after his enemies. General Kelly, Bill Barr, Ty Cobb, General Milley is one of the targets they're talking about prosecuting. And of course, a special counsel to go after the Biden family. They will use this as revenge. His big keyword's been retribution. Retribution. I saw this picture at a Missouri, here in Missouri where I live, the Republican Party of Missouri had this picture up of Donald Trump, his mugshot with this word on it. That's the Missouri Republican Party's official booth at a city fair here about a month ago here. That's what they plan to do. Revenge and retribution against their enemies. And this organization, 75 organizations under the Heritage with $22 million to spend has got a plan, and they've actually published it. And if you're not paying attention, it's gonna happen. Last night, Jen Psaki had Preet Bharara on. They talked about this. This is a great place to end this video and talk about it a little bit at the end here. Here's them discussing just how chilling these news is that's coming out of this reporting.
This, what I found to be a completely crazy story in the Washington Post. I've read it 3 times and I can't stop thinking about it, which basically outlines, and it was kind of overshadowed by everything today, to be honest. It basically outlines the plan that Trump and his allies have to use the federal government to punish critics and opponents if he wins a second term. They're drafting plans. They're talking about invoking the Insurrection Act. Reading that, what did you think? What concerns you the most about what you saw in that story?
So it's, bonkers. I'm not sure what words to apply to the things that are said in that article and the way it's characterizing Donald Trump's plans. I seldom curse on Twitter. I did a couple of hours ago in response to the article. It's ironic that Donald Trump says things about his current political, legal predicament, including with respect to the case we've been talking about, that it's a banana republic. It's not. The things that are being talked about, if you believe the article to be true and the reporting to be accurate and correct, that Donald Trump is specifically wanting to weaponize his next attorney general if he gets back into the presidency and all the people under him to specifically go after not only political enemies of his, but people who he employed who have been disloyal to him without any evidence, without any basis at all. That's the banana republic. And so I think if people should, read the article. I read it twice and I can't stop thinking about it. You read it 3 times. People should read it at least once and understand that the consequences for the rule of law and for democracy and for justice in America, and one standard of justice in America, if Trump becomes the president again, will be a thing of the past.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If Trump regains the presidency, the rule of law that we cherish will be gone. That's how serious the stakes are. Somebody put a post up today I saw that said, everybody's talking about the horse race, and they should be actually talking, the horse race. They're talking about the odds. They keep talking about the odds of Trump winning or Biden winning. The problem is they're not talking about the stakes. What's at stake in this election? And what's at stake is the future of our country as we know it. We got to take it seriously. I hope you are. I'm sure you are. You're Midas Mighty. My name is Fred Wellman. I'm the host of On Democracy, FP Wellman, right here in the MeidasTouch Network. Keep it the fight, folks. We're still in it. Thanks.
Hey, Midas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.